Hi, my name is Peter. This is my wild fermentation lab video. I've decided to do a kombucha for my fermentation. It's a fermented tea beverage. For the recipe, I've decided to do a kombucha based dark and stormy. So let's get started. Okay, so the first step in the process is to brew the tea. I'm going to add 1 liter of boiling water into a 1 gallon jar, and then into the jar I'm going to place 9 tea bags, and I'm going to leave it there for 9 minutes until I'm going to leave it to steep. So just grabbing the tea bags now. I've tied them all together, and I'm going to hang them off the edge like that. So 9 minutes have passed, and I've removed the tea bags from the jar, and now I'm going to add 1 cup of raw sugar, and then I'm going to stir until all the sugar is dissolved into the hot water and tea. This sugar is going to be used as a nutrient source for the kombucha cultures later on. I've let the sugar and tea mixture cool down now until it's reached room temperature, and now I'm going to add 2 liters of cold filtered water, and then after I've added that cold filtered water, I'm going to add the starter kombucha culture. Once the kombucha culture is added, it's actually ready to start fermentation. SCOBY will form on its own after some time. But I've also been provided with a ready-made SCOBY to increase the speed of the fermentation process. So after I've added the kombucha culture, I'm also going to add that SCOBY that I have been provided with. And then we are ready to start the fermentation. Just need to close that jar with a piece with some cotton and secure the cotton onto the jar with a rubber band. It's important that I use a lid that is permeable to air because it's an aerobic process, the fermentation. So if air wasn't allowed to enter the gallon jar, the fermentation would stop. Also, the fermentation creates a gas byproduct, so if the lid was shut tight, then pressure would build up inside the gallon jar and possibly damage it. This is me testing the pH of the kombucha. I did this every day during this 10-day fermentation process. First, I'd rinse off the pH meter in distilled water, and then I'd probe the kombucha. I waited till the pH meter read a constant reading for approximately 30 seconds, and then I'd record that reading in a log. After I finished it with a pH meter, I rinse it off again in distilled water, replace the cap, and it's ready to go again for the next day. The buoyancy of the SCOBY changed a lot during its 10-day fermentation process. It started floating, and then by day 3, the SCOBY sunk to the bottom. At the end of day 7, the SCOBY rose again to the top, and I noticed additional growths on the outside of the SCOBY. Also, there was a lot of gas bubbles I noticed inside the kombucha. So at the end of the 10-day fermentation process, I was ready to remove the SCOBY from the gallon jar. Its fermentation has been finished. So I just grabbed it with a pair of tongs and put it inside a Ziploc bag, ready to be used if I wanted to make kombucha with it again. Tried to take as much air out of the bag as I could before I sealed it. And I put that aside. And then I filled up some smaller jars with the ready kombucha to put into the fridge for storage. I noticed here that the ladling of the kombucha from the 1 gallon jar into that smaller 32-ounce jar was a little bit messy, so I decided to bring it close to the sink to save mess. Okay, now we're ready to make the recipe I decided on using for the kombucha, which is a dark and stormy, which is usually a rum cocktail topped with ginger ale. I decided to use fresh ginger and kombucha to replace the ginger ale in this. So first thing I did was fill the cocktail shaker with ice, and then I added a shot of spiced rum. Also into the cocktail shaker, I added some freshly grated ginger. This is to simulate the ginger flavor from the ginger ale that's usually part of the dark and stormy cocktail. Just getting that freshly grated ginger in there now. I closed the cocktail shaker and shook it to mix the ingredients inside and chill them. Removing the top of the cocktail shaker now. It's ready to be poured, but first I needed to put some ice into that short glass. I strained my rum and ginger mix into the shot glass with ice, and then I topped it with the wild fermentation kombucha. Then to garnish, I added a wedge of lime, and a straw to drink it with. Had a sip there, tasted very nice.